Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and you're listening to a new episode of Web Dev 101. In this video, what I'll do is just do more of a technical video and talk about JavaScript, specifically about emitting events. So you've probably run into emitting events in several different libraries, whether it's jQuery, Vue, and Angular, or just in the general Node universe where you have event emitters all over the place. But they generally all follow the same sort of premise under the hood, just so you can understand kind of how they work. So, specifically the way they generally work, and this is going to be more specific to how the way jQuery works and the way the events library works in Node. But basically what you do is you create listeners, okay? And people are imagining that these listeners are constantly listening for the event. They're not. The idea of what's happening is that to the event with the listener, there's an array. Okay, so imagine these little an array of arrays. Each array has two elements. A string, that's the type of event. So let's imagine there's a div on your website, and it has an array of listeners. So the first one is and then the first element is a 2-element array. The first thing is the string that says click, and then the second element in that array is a function. So essentially when you do add event listeners, or you do .on in jQuery, what you're doing is you're adding this little array into that array. Cool. But it's not listening for anything. What happens is that when the event occurs, so when you click on that div, that event is emitted. And when an event is emitted, what it does, it checks the target of the event. In this case, the div goes to that array of event listeners, loops through the array to see if there's any listeners that are listening for that click event, that string. So basically it's emitting an event of type string, click. So it goes to the first one and says, is the string click? Nope. Is the next one click? Nope, nope, nope. And then it finds one that does have the string click as the first element, and then it runs the function that's the second element of that array. Okay, so technically the only time because a lot of times people have the impression that these event listeners are just constantly looping and checking, has the event occurred, looking like if there's some Boolean that's going to be switched on. Okay, it's actually done in a much more efficient way. Basically you're creating a list of these listeners, and when the event is emitted, you try to see if there's an applicable event listener on the list. But with so many events on my screen, wouldn't that take forever because there's so many different events? Well, each item in your DOM, each div, each span, each node has its own array of listeners and emits its own events. Okay, so essentially, now this is where bubbling up, and that's when you get more technical, because you click on a point on the screen, you might be clicking multiple and triggering multiple events and multiple things. I won't get into that. But that's essentially what's going on. That event occurs. Those particular nodes look at their array of event listeners to see if one of the events get triggered. This is more explicit in Node when you have an event emitter object. And literally that's all it does. When you do, event, your event emitter .on, you're just adding an event listener to that array for that instance. And then when you do whatever instance you have of the event emitter .emit, it just emits a string, and that string is then matched up against that array of listeners and then triggers the appropriate events. That's it. That's how events work. So it's very, very easy to replicate. If you wanted to create your own custom event emitter, you could theoretically do that, although the built-in one works pretty fine in 99.9% of the situations. Event emitters mixed with promises, you have a good way of being able to control that asynchronous tasks happen in the order that you want them to. Because you can have an asynchronous task happen, then once the promise resolves, then the then kicks in, emits an event, and that event then triggers something else, triggers a listener that was waiting for that event to trigger. You can create a nice, cool chain of events. And, that's definitely something I've come to deeper appreciate as I've been creating my own backend framework. So it's just a little mini framework for building APIs. You're still probably better off using Express. It's just so I can learn how to do it and really have appreciation of what's going on under the hood in these backend frameworks. It's called Merver, so you can find it on the NPM registry under AM am-merver. So npm install am-merver. And I'll soon add it to my list of libraries over there at alexmercedcoder.com. Just want to kind of add a few more features first. But otherwise, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just thought that was an interesting topic. And I thought it was worth discussing kind of how that works under the hood, because it really kind of unlocks how you can think about a lot of other things and how you use other things. So my name is Alex Merced. Have a great day and enjoy.